Hey, y'all, welcome back to the Relentless Love podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. If this is your first time, go ahead and like, subscribe, follow us on Facebook, on Instagram, Spotify, YouTube, all the things. Our heart really is to just empower individuals and couples to relentlessly pursue passion and purpose, both in their life and all relationships. Last month, we kind of reset and cast new vision for the future where we focused primarily on marriage and relationships in the past. We're kind of broadening the scope a little bit because we need to be relentless in every facet of life. Individually, if you're a single, really our audience is so diverse. So every episode we hope speaks to different people at different stages of life. And our hope is that you glean something valuable for you in that stage. So this month, since I actually just celebrated a birthday, just turned 42, and obviously it was bittersweet given our circumstances. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go check out last month's episodes. We had 4 great episodes, just kind of updating you on life, how I'm doing, how my kids are doing. But this month, because it is Women's History Month, I want to go back a little bit and share my origin story, share the things that shaped me in kind of 3 quarters of my life, and just how, as people in general, though I'm focusing on me and I'm a woman and it's Women's History Month, I want to encourage you because I know we have a lot of men that tune in. Shout out to the men. Who want to be great husbands, who want to be great future husbands, good sons, great fathers. There's so much wisdom that you can get from these episodes. So thank you for hanging in there. Even though our audience is primarily women, we do have a lot of men. And even if you're single, I want to encourage you. A lot of my story, there's so much you can get really for all of it. And so I don't want to get ahead of myself, but just hang in there. Don't assume that this is not for you, because you never know what God can use, whose story God can use to encourage you, to challenge you, to help build you up. So, quick story. I don't know what we were doing, me and the kids recently. It may have been a movie that we were watching. And, I've had this question in the back of my mind for a while, but it was the perfect opportunity because of whatever happened it must have been kids growing up in a divorce situation. And I asked them, because we've always tried to have open, honest conversations with our kids, and definitely with them losing their dad, I always try to check in with them on different things, and not lose that authenticity, because now more than ever, we need to have real, honest conversations. So, anyway, I asked them, would they have rathered losing their dad the way they did or us divorcing at some point? And it's so interesting to me. The girl spoke up first, and it was without hesitation. Oh, we would rather the way we lost him than divorce. I was shocked in a sense, but not surprised because my kids are so insightful. And so, of course, I wanted to know why. And, they just said they couldn't imagine how different life would be if we weren't together and having a split time with us and all of that. That would have brought more anguish and anxiety for them than actually losing their father. So I found that fascinating, but not surprising in the sense because it is part of my story. And so that's what I want to talk about this episode. The first part of how I was shaped. My shaping is, I think, parents, and I'm speaking to couples in this moment, but we don't always think about whether we stay together and stick it out or we choose divorce. In any case, when we create an environment of chaos, confusion, conflict, dysfunction, how it affects our kids, how it shapes our kids, and how it shapes us. And so I'm just going to share very honestly and transparently about my experience, not all the bad. There was a lot of good too, but just things to think about. And even for ourselves individually as adults, do we consider how our upbringing shaped us, how it contributed to how we show up in our relationships, how we show up in the workplace, how we show up in ministry? And so I hope this is encouraging to you. It was also confirmation too. I got to meet up, which was only a God thing, a dear friend that we were close. It was like a clique of four of us in kindergarten, y'all. Kindergarten. I hadn't seen them since, gosh, we were like 8 or 9, so like second or third grade. I hadn't seen her, and so we caught up recently, and she and I were talking about how both of us kind of came up in broken homes. Our parents divorced at the same age, 9 years old, and that's such a formative age. And both of us experienced brokenness because we grew up in a broken home. And it looked different. That brokenness looked different, but nonetheless, it affected us. And so that's what I wanted to share. So I hope you get something and it's encouraging. But I grew up, I'm from Louisiana. Some of you know that. But I want to be clear, South Louisiana. So if you look at the shape, that little corner of the boot, like below that is South Louisiana. It's a totally different culture in North Louisiana. So I'm from South Louisiana. I was born in Lafayette. And you can ask anybody, that is the best food. The best food is not in New Orleans. It is in South Louisiana. It is in Lafayette, that area. Go find out the truth. But man, good people, good food. That's where I was born and raised. In fact, I was laughing with the kids because my mom was working on a Friday when I came, and I totally disrupted her her day. I was the third of four kids, and so I have two older sisters, a younger brother, and man, I have so many fond memories of us growing up doing mischievous stuff. Oh my gosh, stuff my kids wouldn't even think about. I remember we always joke about throwing rice on the floor and doing a slip and slide in the house because we were bored one summer, and putting water on wooden floor. It was awful, y'all. We did, but we were trying to be creative, right? We didn't have all the screens and stuff, and so we were entertaining ourselves. So I have a lot of fond memories. But sadly, a lot of my childhood, I have like these mental blocks that I've had to kind of unpack. Even in therapy, I've done EMDR, shout out to EMDR, to unpack some of the memories that I blocked off, even good ones, because of just what I experienced. You know, even before my parents' divorce at the age of 9, I don't have a lot of memory of the good times. It was more so when I was a lot younger, probably when things were good, when I was more of a baby. And so I don't remember a lot. So what I remember is a lot of stalemate type environments. I remember tension. We didn't always see the arguments or hear them, but you could feel it. You could cut it with a knife. And, you know, even just, I don't remember sitting at the table a lot. I'm not saying we didn't do it, but I don't remember it in the way that I hope my kids remember it, you know? And what I do remember is just kind of living in a silo. I remember feeling like I was alone. I had a lot of anger and bitterness and resentment from the divorce and the effect it had on us and my mom. And so obviously growing up with a lot of anger and negative emotions like that affects you. I think the biggest way it affected me was, even honestly, even before the divorce, I think I was always striving for attention and affection. Being a middle child, I think that's normal. I've actually been reading this book with the kids about birth order. So find that book if you have multiple kids. It's fascinating. Just some of the character traits that we naturally take on depending on or based on our birth order. And so as a third of four, you know, I had my own internal conflict and complexes, beliefs, lies that I was believing about feeling unloved. This was even before the divorce, you know, feeling like I wasn't seen, I wasn't heard, I wasn't valued, and I wasn't loved. And so I believe that contributed to the overachiever that I became in my academics. So I was always a straight A student through high school. In sports, I was very competitive. It's funny, I grew up a tomboy. Some of you may not believe that, but I only wanted to be around my dad, my brother, my stepbrother, who I'll talk about a little bit later. But I felt more comfortable being around boys. So that, I think, I got some stigma even from that. I didn't want to be around women gossiping, you know, other different environments we were in, that wasn't cool to me. I wanted to be with my dad, but then my dad is like, no, go be with the women, because that's just the mindset. When I was growing up in the 80s and 90s, women stay with the women, men stay with the men. And so I didn't feel like I had a place even before the divorce. And then of course after the divorce, the home being completely broken. So I grew up, it was kind of dysfunctional before. And I want to say can I just say every family has its own dysfunction, its own measure of dysfunction. There's no perfect family. The difference is how you work through it, how you cope with it, and can you talk through it. And I don't remember anyway learning how to work through conflict in the healthiest of ways and talking through it. So what I saw was you just split, you just run, you don't try to work it out. So that's the belief that I kind of carried on through life. So anyway, elementary school, I remember, like I said, that friend that I was so close to from kindergarten to third grade. Then all of a sudden, these close relationships that I developed, these close friendships, were now broken because parents aren't thinking about keeping up with kids and she needs to keep those relationships. So where I felt love and acceptance and belonging, that was now taken from me. And so and then not feeling it at home, so that contributed to a lot of the negative emotions that I had just building up. And so I remember after that, living with my mom. We lived with my mom for a while. There was a period that me and my sisters lived with my dad. But I think what I experienced from the divorce was a lot of moving, a lot of transition, a lot of shifts. I think even before the divorce, the workforce job market was hard, for my father. And so we moved. I remember moving a lot. So imagine it's hard to maintain relationships, retain friendships when you're constantly moving, you're changing schools. And so even that feeling of insecurity from that instability, because you're always shifting. So the beauty of because again, this is about how it shaped me as a woman and as a person. um, I was able to adapt to change because I experienced so much change and transition. And so now it's a superpower that I have, that I can help people thrive in change and have a sense of purpose and vision in the midst of transition, right? But it was a hard fought battle for me, because that change and transition as a child, it affects how you develop. It affects the circles you're in, the people you're surrounded with. So after, we were in the same school up until third grade, and then I went to a different school in fourth grade. I ended up going to a different school in fifth and sixth, maybe seventh. So again, all of that just hard to really feel like I belong somewhere, because when I finally get my footing up, for whatever reason, different reasons, it's time to shift again. And so, even in middle school, it was rough. I went from living, there was a point where me and my sisters wanted to stay in the schools we were in, and my mom made a hard decision to move back to her hometown where she had more support. And so there was a period the girls lived with my dad, and my brother lived with my mom. And so even that, I didn't realize my brother and I were so close before that. And that change kind of changed the trajectory of our relationship and our friendship. At least I thought it was a friendship. He was like my first best friend, y'all. So anyway, yeah, it's just all of those changes, all of those moving parts affect you. It affects your emotions. It affects how you function in school. I was a straight A student, but I can recall a season where maybe my grades were dropping. It might have been right after the divorce. And I remember one of my teachers saying, hey, something's going on. Like, I need to spend some time with her. She took me to the mall. That is a memory I remember fondly, that she took time to be present with me in a way maybe my parents couldn't at the time. And so she stepped up and filled in the gap. So I want to encourage you, divorce may not be a part of your story, but maybe you're in the church or whatever, and a kid around you that is going through that, and they just need somebody. Maybe a kid like my kids who are going through loss. Shout out to all the people who reach out, they step up, They hang out with my kids, they pour into them. I could call names, but you know who you are. And I'm so grateful because now that I'm a single mother, I cannot be everything for my kids in the way that my husband and I were together. And so you need those people to step in the gap. That's the power of youth ministry and kids ministry and all of that. So shout out to that teacher that took me to the mall and let me feel special and let me pick something out for myself, because that's what I was lacking. I think she could see the cry of my heart was I didn't feel loved. I was angry that my home was broken up. And so anyway, all of those things um shaped me. Even that overachieving, going back to that, it spilled over into, high school. Um now that my relationships are different, friendships are different. Actually, going back a little bit, middle school was hard. I think that's where I was trying to go. Middle school was hard because when we finally, me and my second sister, we moved to my mom's hometown with her after a season being apart. That was a whole like culture shock, totally different. We had been in Lafayette, up to that point, half our lives. And then now we're going to this smaller town, totally different culture. Lafayette, I would say, it was a bigger city, not as big as New Orleans, but we were raised in an environment where there were more possibilities because you're in a bigger city. You just see more things. You experience more culture. You experience more just things to do. And so going to a smaller town where there's limitations, and my husband would always attest to this growing up in Pittsburgh, Texas, small town, just it can affect the mindset, and being around people, with that mindset and you just being immersed in it's a culture shock and you can feel the conflict of that. And it makes you feel like, am I weird? Am I different? Because I think differently, because of where I came from. And so I just remember being middle school is hard enough, y'all. So transitioning in middle school, feeling like an outcast. And there was so many people I think who tried to embrace me, but I'm just different by nature. I rubbed my family the wrong way, before Christ, and I'll get to that in the next episode. You know, I wasn't the nicest person because I had so much anger and all these emotions that I didn't have a safe place to process. And faith wasn't fully a part of my journey yet. The experience I had in faith at the time was very legalistic. The perspective was very it wasn't relational. It was ritualistic and religious, like literally. And so that's not the most it's not the easiest thing when you're already feeling unloved. You need that relation. You need that aspect of God's character. And that wasn't the way we saw God. Or, I can only speak for myself based on what I was raised, I'm trying not to call out that faith background, because it has changed. But nonetheless, for me, it wasn't a healthy thing for what I was already experiencing. So it I didn't really want anything to do with God, at that time and at that age. So it was an afterthought. And so anyway, getting through middle school was tough, feeling like an outcast. And so that pushed me even more into my academics, into athletics, and then going into high school. And at this point, I wasn't even interested in boys, like not at all. And I can remember distinctly, it wasn't until I started hanging out with this cousin and, she had her little boyfriend. And so then it was just the natural next thing, like, oh, okay, I think I should be, interested in this. But man, I wasn't even thinking about it. And so with that, now being introduced to boys, maybe my freshman year, I want to say, then I finally experienced like a glimmer of what love or feeling loved feels like, being in relationships now, dabbling in dating relationships. And so leaning too much into that, feeling like I need to be in a relationship. And I justified it because I was in committed relationships. I was with somebody for 2 years at a time, which is a long time when you're in high school, y'all. But anyway, just searching for that sense of connection and love and belonging and acceptance. And for me, on the outside, it looked like they were healthy outlets, but the motivation was not healthy. And that was a result of the brokenness I experienced. Athletics are great, the being a part of the team, but I was so competitive. I had to, my drive wasn't the best. Like I could have gone farther if I had the right motivation, but I just didn't have that guidance, right? And that's unfortunately I didn't have that same teacher in my life, that consistency that could have been a positive impact. And I had great teachers, don't get me wrong, but the same effort and intentionality to be a part of my personal life wasn't there. So I didn't have somebody saying, "Oh man, you should keep running track in college," because we were all state, in track and in volleyball. I was really good in sports, but I didn't have that support. So my decision making, I thought, was really good. But in hindsight, I could have made better decisions, or just different, not necessarily better, but different decisions if I had the right relational equity. And that's why my husband and I are so passionate about mentorship, discipleship, because we didn't have it when we needed it the most. And so, yeah, so just pursuing sports, was a little off. I could have gone a lot farther. If I had that support, if I had the backing. I didn't feel like I always had the support. And again, I had amazing parents, but they just had their own things going on. They were going through, and that's the challenge of divorce, because each of my siblings processed it differently. We had our own struggles coming out of it. And then of course my parents, just having different challenges now, trying to start a new life, not being married. My parents were married 26 years, y'all. So with that said, it's interesting now that I'm still a marriage coach, and finding my footing. I'm finding more couples who, and honestly, even Brock and I together, mediated couples who are together 20 years, and they're hanging on because of the kids, or they're, and barely scraping by. And it can do a disservice to the kids if we're not truly fighting for the relationship. If we're just in it, but we're coasting, we're not doing them any favors, because if they're seeing that dysfunction, they're not seeing what a healthy, thriving marriage should look like. And so that's just a nugget for couples. Like if you're in it, if you're going to stick it out for the kids, then give it your all. Like go to therapy, find a coach, reach out to me. Or if you prefer a couple, man, I know so many couples I can refer you to, but reach out. Don't just suffer through, you know what I mean, and stick it out for the kids. I would never advocate for divorce, but do something so that you're thriving. Because if you're not thriving and showing up as your best, you're not giving your kids your best. And so having a household with two parents who aren't truly fulfilled, who aren't truly satisfied, and who aren't doing the work, it's actually only making things worse for the kids. So you may have parents in the home, but they're not emotionally available, and you're not showing up fully present. So are you really doing what's best for them? That's a question I would pose. And if it's not what's best, then what are you willing to do to shift the narrative, to change the story? Because all of that is shaping them, and it's shaping you, right? So anyway, that was just a sidebar that I hope was helpful. But high school, like I said, I leaned into relationships, trying to feel that sense of love, in some ways for the first time. Not that I wasn't, man, my mom especially was extraordinary. She was such a strong woman. So a lot of that shaped me. A lot of what I saw her endure and keep going. She put her family first. And so that's why I go hard for my kids, because of how I saw my mom sacrifice. And she worked jobs that men should work, because she was a single mother trying to take care of 4 kids. And so she was willing to do that. But what happened was she got hurt because of that. She put herself in harm's way, out of good reason. But she ended up, on disability and not able to work. But to be honest, I think what breaks my heart the most about my mom is that, I would talk to her and ask her different things. And, she was the first Black majorette, in her school. And she actually went through integration, like I want to say her junior or senior year. So anyway, she went through a lot, man. She could have written books, all the stuff that she endured. She lost her mother, either high school age or right after high school. So she went through a lot, and I respect her so much. And again, a lot of who she is and what I saw shaped me into how the strengths people see in me. It's not my strength, it's just this grace God has given me. It's really weakness, I say, and it's God's strength made perfect through my weakness. But I saw a mom who was resilient. She was relentless, man, in doing whatever it took to take care of her family. And so I saw that. But what I also learned, and I try to lean in doing the opposite, is she sacrificed to the point of denying herself, walking in her purpose, walking in her calling, even taking time to discover that. And so there was so much untapped potential that I saw with her. She was a majorette, but also the drum major, I think, at one point. And so musically, she had opportunities that she missed out on. And so I know y'all think my kids get it all from Brock Jones, but I have a pretty strong musical background myself. In middle school, I was in the band, played like 2 or 3 different instruments. I was always first chair. So that's part of my shaping too. And I gotta kind of shut it down, actually. As I shift, all the different shifts can interrupt your world. And so I didn't carry on band into high school. And so, but that musical ear that I have, I see it in my daughter. She might have her dad's vocals, but she gets some of my musicality in that ear for music from me. And so, I was a creative to even dance. I'll talk more about in the next episode. That was a huge thing for me. But in high school, like, I would get groups together and we would be in talent shows, and I loved choreography. So all of those were things that brought me a sense of joy in the midst of all the struggle that I was going through as a young person. And again, going back to high school, I think, again, all of the brokenness, the biggest pitfall for me was just going from relationship to relationship and thinking that that would fulfill me, instead of knowing that I could go, because I didn't know at the time the ultimate love that I could experience through my faith. And so that's the next part of my chapter. But just a few takeaways I want to leave with you, as you are considering your own shaping. What shaped you? Why do you show up the way you show up? And what was it from your childhood? Have you processed that in therapy? Have you just had any outlet to think about it? I think we never look back to point fingers, but we look back to understand. That's what history is about. We can't know where we're going until we know where we came from and what happened and why, because all of that contributes to our personalities. My tenacity, my resilience, that relentless, dogged determination that I have is because of the hardship my family and I personally went through. And so it is a value, but it also is why it's been hard to have healthy friendships and ones that sustain. It wasn't until I'm in my 30s that I have a friendship that has endured and been life-giving to me. I've had really good friends along the way, don't get me wrong. But one that has stood the test of time, there are not many that I could, maybe 2 or 3, and I'm grateful for those. But it's contributed to that sense of not feeling accepted and loved. And so I talk about a lot in coaching, both marriage and individual. We all have deep needs that need to be met. And so ultimately, only God can truly fulfill them, because humans, we are all flawed. We're all broken. Our parents cannot fill those deep needs for us. Our spouse cannot fill those deep needs for us. Those deep needs are acceptance, security, identity, and purpose. And so that comes from the Lord ultimately. However, when we don't know the Lord, we're looking for ways to fill those cups. And I was looking in the wrong places. I was looking through achievement academically and through sports. It also shaped my identity. My identity was tied to those things. This superstar student and this star athlete. That's where I felt like I mattered. When it came to relationships, I felt loved when I was having sex, and so it contributed to, um, promiscuity and things that then affected and made me less confident and insecure. And it's not healthy, right? And so I'll talk more about that next time. But again, all of those deep need cups were empty. And I was just trying to fill them the best way I could. I had no sense of purpose, really. I had a drive. I knew I wanted to be a doctor, but it was more of the feeling of success and achievement, not because I truly felt called to that career and that profession. And so I lacked all of those things, man. So I was just on the outside looking like I had it together, but I was so broken. But I want to encourage you, regardless of the brokenness you've experienced, past or even present, whatever brokenness you have now, if it's that marriage that I talked about, maybe you have gone through the divorce and you didn't want it, and now you're concerned about your kids. Know that God can redeem all things. He can fill in the gaps. His grace truly is sufficient. He will surround you with that healthy community to help you be the things you need to be for your kids. And ultimately, God is going to be everything those kids need because you're one person, whether you're the husband that has gone through that divorce or the wife. God will give you what you need. So know that you're not alone either. But I want to speak to the ones who are in that marriage that is struggling. Don't just stick it out for the kids. Stick it out because you want a marriage that is fulfilling for you. You want a marriage that honors God and truly displays to the world what that unconditional love looks like in the fight, the relentless fight for a healthy marriage. Don't, if you're in it, it's not too late. Nothing is too hard for God. So reach out. I would be happy to serve you. I still work with couples together. I even work with wives individually. And so reach out. And even if you feel like you prefer a couple, reach out and I can get you connected with one. But don't struggle alone and don't just coast. Don't just feel like, oh, I just got to stick it out until the kids graduate, because you are doing them a disservice. They deserve to have a healthy, thriving marriage to look up to and to look forward to in the future. So that is a part one of my shaping. I hope something was encouraging to you. Um, know that you could be in it or you could be the one on the outside that can make a difference in the life of that child or that husband or wife. They may need someone to speak life into them. So thank y'all for tuning in. Remember to like, subscribe, follow, do all the things. And I hope you look forward to more relentless love. Again, it's not just about marriage and relationships, but being relentless and truly fulfilling all the things that God has and not giving up, man, when life hits, because it hits, it's gonna hit. But you can build that relentless pursuit. Love you guys.